The game system continues to warn Damien and Uncle Sam that the Forgotten Spider Queen was revealing herself, and advises them to prepare for the Master of the Refuge's wrath. Instead of being afraid of the big bad boss, Damien and Uncle were excited to finally see her come out. And so she does, covered in a demonic black and purple aura as she lets out a ferocious scream, announcing her presence to everyone in the cave. Her eyes are up there, gentlemen. As the Spider Queen Aliwan reveals her face, it shows a look of anger. Once again, she is one of the queens of the countless factions who led the ancient spider kingdoms. She was defeated by one of the 12 pure-blooded branches, Princess Arachne, and lost most of her lineage abilities with only the instinctual desire to survive remaining. Compared to several hundred years ago, she has atrophied in several aspects, but she possesses strong acidic bodily fluids to digest most organisms and a strong obsession for her prey. She is much greedier than before. Her unique trait is that she is of noble blood, and has quite high physical abilities and remaining techniques, so players needed to be extra careful in dealing with her. Uncle was curious about why they were suddenly facing the big bad Spider Queen, so Damien tells him that he needed to think of her as his free pass to receive the Adventurer certificate. Looking at the Spider Queen closely, Damien could see that she was still the same as ever, and also, right now, they needed to be especially more careful. As the Spider Queen wasn't that far away from them, Damien knew that if they even moved by a little bit, she would charge towards them at a fast pace. So to make things easier, Damien created a group chat first as he had a plan in mind. Using the group chat, he informs Uncle that when facing the Spider Queen, they couldn't move in any random way, so when she moves, Damien wants Uncle to prepare his strongest attack against her. Because all they needed was one strong blow. Looking at the way Damien was smiling at him, Uncle was questioning about what he was thinking. But seeing how Damien has performed so far, Uncle decides to trust in his plan and starts to charge his warhammer with a powerful blue aura. Hoping that a single blow was enough to work against the Spider Queen. But as Damien and Uncle were preparing for their plan, the Spider Queen started hers too. In the palm of her sharp claws, a ball of purple energy was gathering together. Draining the blood out of her fellow children, their blood seems to empower her skill. Damien was able to spot the skill and knew what it was the Spider Queen's blood explosion skill. Wasting no time at all, our boy started to cast his own spell, gathering a bunch of red energy in the palm of his hand just like the Spider Queen did. A bunch of explosions occurred in the air as the Spider Queen and Damien's skill fought against one another. The result was Damien and Uncle being completely fine from the spider's attack, revealing their Giga Chad aura. While the Spider Queen simply had Ohio aura on her side plus her ugly face. After defending themselves from her attack, Damien scolds the Queen for attacking them without saying a single word. Bundle agrees with him, even saying that the Queen has no morals. Uncle was stunned to see that the Queen was actually closer to them than before, wondering if Damien had actually seen her attack that quickly. As the battle had started, Damien tells him to just think of that one strong blow they needed. While he charges up his attack, Damien was going to stall her for as long as it takes. Seeing that everything was going to be okay, Uncle agreed with the plan and started to charge his powerful blue aura once more. The Spider Queen was bad as heck. Her face was filled with anger after seeing that Damien was able to block her surprise attack. Our boy started to gather even more of the red aura into his hand, warning the Queen to stop glaring at him while he's asking her nicely. As he charges towards the Queen, Leroy Jenkins style, he warns her that he was going to pluck out her eyes as revenge. While Damien charges recklessly to get the Spider Queen's attention while Uncle charges for his powerful blow, the Queen unleashes a new set of skills, summoning multiple balls made out of her deadly purple aura. Bundle was scared but Damien showed no fear as he went up against her skill using his own Witch Doctor skill. Explosions were seen once more in the air as Damien casted the Blood's Craving skill to counter the Queen's skill. Damien was doing his best, knowing that the attack from the Queen was the same from before, and that if he was a normal player, then he would have already helplessly fallen for it because the cave was so dark, making it hard to dodge or attack against her skill. But thanks to his sixth sense, Damien could see everything, as if the cave was fully lit. Ordering Bundle to move, Damien was on to the next part of his plan. Using his coolest skill, in my opinion, Bundle and his siblings were positioned above a cliff behind Damien as he stood in front, covered in his blue aura and surrounded by multiple arrows. Bundle was the acting commander for his siblings, asking them if they were ready for what's coming. They all chirped together in unison, blowguns in their mouths, aimed and ready to fire. Hearing their response, Damien orders for everyone to fire everything they got towards the Spider Queen's direction using his Witch Doctor skill called Vengeful Spirit's Arrow. The arrows proved to be effective against the spiders as they were shot down one by one, as each arrow flew past them. Damien even notices that the queen was using her own children as shields, so he knew that he needed to tie her feet before Uncle finishes preparing his one blow. This time, a dark green aura started to flow around Damien's arm as he casted another witch doctor skill. With a wave of his hand, a whole bunch of insects started to swarm towards the Spider Queen. Damien was using the witch doctor skill called Epidemic Rage. The insects followed Damien's instructions and gathered themselves towards the queen's legs, causing her to be confused by what was going on. It turns out that the skill Epidemic Rage applies 50% of magic damage per second by releasing Epidemic's aura to those around the caster. If the caster hits the mark, the target's defense ability, magic resistance, and abnormal status resistance will be reduced by 1% every second. The radius of the cast increases is proportional to the caster's intelligence stat, and if there is an enemy nearby not affected, they can move without being influenced by the casting radius. The insects were doing as Damien wanted, planting themselves onto the queen's legs, holding her in place. At the perfect time too, as Uncle informs Damien that he has completed his preparations for the one blow. Seeing the immense aura that Uncle was giving off, Damien was shocked to see that this was his actual power. His aura this time was from a different dimension, the scarlet light aura that surrounds his warhammer. Damien knew that if Uncle hits a vital point, then no monster would survive that hit. Seeing that everything was in place, Damien informs Uncle that it was time for the execution, so they excitedly charge towards the queen who was stuck in place, thanks to Damien's insects. Uncle unleashes his blacksmith skill called Unnatural Death, transforming his aura and turning him into a battle god, ready to smash a bitch into pieces. Even the Spider Queen was able to sense the danger of Uncle's aura as he charged towards her. In a desperate attempt to save her life, she screams out loud, unleashing another one of her skills. The system warns the boys that the forgotten Spider Queen Aliwan is now howling as she spews a highly acidic aura. Damien was pissed off to see this from the system. He couldn't believe that the queen was using Poison Nova, which takes an incredible amount of mana. The plan has now changed as Damien warns Uncle that he would die instantly if he gets hit by the wave of purple acid that was coming in their direction, so he shouts at Uncle to dodge it immediately. Uncle was panicking due to the sudden change of plan, so instead of casting Unnatural Death, he changed the skill halfway, and decided to use Gravity Pose to dodge the acid wave. After dodging the acid wave, Uncle using Downward Blow to attack the queen instead. The impact of his warhammer was strong enough to shatter the ground and spread boulders made of stone everywhere, while leaving the queen buried in the rubble. Seeing the aftermath of his skill attack, Uncle wonders if he used too much strength in killing the queen. Damien rushes in afterwards, praising Uncle was his strong attack as it was no joke at all. But Uncle was nervous. He reveals to Damien that in order to dodge the acid wave, he used the one blow that was meant for the queen. Damien could see that the queen had survived, rising out of the rubble. He knew that it was a shame that Uncle had done that but guessed that it couldn't be helped. After all, if he had hit the queen on her head with the original skill, she would have died immediately. So he assures Uncle that it was fine, and to focus on surviving right now, while preparing to just do the final blow instead. Damien turns around, assuring Uncle that his nephew was going to take care of the rest. Uncle was hesitating a bit to leave everything to our boy, but reluctantly agreed with his suggestion. Damien started to think. He knew that the skill Gravity Pose, which is said to be the best blacksmith skill among all enchant skills, resulted in most of the Red Soldier spiders dead, but caused the Spider Queen to start raging instead. In his T-pose stance, Damien started to cast two different skills in each of his hands, the Witch Doctor's Blood Craving and Epidemic Rage. The queen was serious this time too, combining and channeling all her aura into her body this time. The system continues to warn Damien that the Spider Queen is angered. But even after seeing the warning, Damien was focused. Determined to end this shit show of a fight right now, he combines the auras of the skills into his center, using the Witch Doctor skill called Compress to combine the two skills, turning them into a ball of blue aura, while summoning 100 vengeful spirit arrows. It's the final countdown, as the Spider Queen lets it all out, and so does our boy as he screams at the queen to die. A massive blue and purple wave of aura clashed against one another, as Damien and the Spider Queen went all out, intending to kill the other. Damien seems to be winning the exchange of blows as the Spider Queen takes on his attacks without defending herself. Our boy knew that she had lost most of her bloodline's skills, and only had limited skills at her disposal right now. As his attacks continued to land on her, Damien also knew that she couldn't use inherent traps or domain expansion attacks either. As he deals one more blow at her, Damina was smiling, wondering if he was able to use domain expansion at this point. Excited with that thought, he moves closer to the Spider Queen, realizing that the Spider Queen was no longer a free pass for Uncle, but instead, she was going to be the puppet that our boy was going to test his skills on. Changing from a long-range attack, Damien uses his Epidemic Rage skill once again, focusing it into his fist this time. While doing so, he decides to change his method and build the area too. The result was a domain expansion. As he landed his fist against the Spider Queen, the system notifies of the skill called Expand Darkness Spiritual Food Fruit. The moment it was announced, a black aura started to surround where Damien and the Spider Queen was. Deep inside the ball of darkness, Damien was amazed that what he thought actually worked. Even though this wasn't your typical domain expansion, he figured out another way to use Epidemic Rage. The moment he entered the domain expansion, Uncle was quick to message him in the group chat, wondering what had happened to him and if he had logged out. Damien responds back, knowing that Uncle was probably shocked since this was something that Damien didn't expect would work and he hadn't told Uncle about it before. In the group chat, Damien assures him that he was fine and to continue preparing his final blow since he was going to do the rest. Once he was done messaging Uncle, Damien turned around, to see that the Spider Queen was screaming in pain, due to it being poisoned. Damien knew that this was the result of it entering someone else's domain, making her feel like she was dying due to the debuffs. As he said this, a bunch of system windows appeared, informing him that the Spider Queen's defense, magic resistance, and abnormal status resistance had decreased. But instead of admitting defeat at this point, the Spider Queen lets out another howl, surprising Damien before showing him that she wasn't finished yet. This queen ain't going down this easily. Damien was glad to see it this way, but admits that he didn't have the time, and wanted to end things quickly. He charges at the Spider Queen by himself, curious about how much he can face her with nothing but his body. With one of her arms missing and blood flowing, the Spider Queen does the insane. She uses her own blood to cast her skill, pulling out more of it. Seeing this, Damien stops in his tracks immediately, pissed off about what she was doing, and realizing that it was different from the blood explosion she had used before. He notices that she doesn't have her subordinate spiders to use as ingredients here, so she was trying to use her blood instead to attack. The way the Spider Queen was attacking right now was no different from craving and eating her own skin. As he charges in, Damien dodges the Spider Queen's attacks, asking her if she thought he couldn't pierce through because of this. With a fist in the air, he challenges the Queen to fight each other properly. But instead of agreeing with his suggestion, the Queen goes in for a grab, but our boy manages to knock and block her hand away quickly, allowing him to reach her at just the right spot. With a massive blow onto the Queen, Damien was able to lessen their difference in size. His strike was powerful enough to send her crashing down, almost causing her health to reach half. But our boy wasn't stopping there. He was determined, knowing that being this close to her made it possible. So he charges into her once again, striking the same spot over and over. As he lands blow after blow, the system notifies him that the effect of the title Narrow Escapee has activated, and that the Queen was now bleeding. As she suffers from Damien's continuous punches, the system informs him that the effect of the title Survivor of the Battlefield has been activated. Damien's hand was glowing green due to the effect of the Rune of Greed Extorting Hand, which has been activated. This new effect allows him to absorb the Spider Queen's health and mana. Damien was glad. All the effects he had earned until now were becoming one and activating, causing the battle demon inside of him to come out. He happily smashes the Spider Queen's face with his fist, smiling like a mad demon as he relishes in the joys of the battle. As soon as the blow landed, he landed in a superhero position, wondering if the fight was over. But the system warning turns red, catching his attention. It turns out that the fight isn't over yet as the Spider Queen still has a hidden card to play. It turns out that she was about to release a powerful energy. Our boy started to panic upon seeing the bright light, cause it might mean that he sees the final light. Unable to stop it in time, the powerful energy the Queen unleashed resulted in a massive explosion spreading everywhere. The domain expansion that contained Damien and the Spider Queen started to crack due to the power of the explosion. Even Uncle was stunned to see what was going on, covering his eyes from the bright light and wondering if the barrier had been released. Through the smoke, he could only see the Spider Queen's body coming out. In a hurry, Uncle looks around, shouting out for Damien to respond to his voice. And soon enough, he sees our boy, sitting on top of the Queen's body. Damien stands up, completely fine and without a scratch, calling out to Uncle and informing him where he was. Damien wanted to chat, but he knew that right now, they needed to handle the Queen who was struggling to live. With his leg raised high up, Damien stomps the Queen's face, hoping to end the fight right now. After kicking the hoe in the face, Damien casually leaps down from her body, telling Uncle that the queen wasn't much, just acting up. But Uncle was concerned, asking Damien if he was okay cause he thought that he had died from the light earlier on. Damien reveals that he was fortunate enough to have the perfect skill to use at that time. It turns out that this was the first time he had actually used the skill. We turn back time to when the queen was about to let it rip, and Damien could see his death coming, but luckily, he still had one card to play, a skill called Ghost, which transforms his body into a spirit state and moves it into the spirit world, leaving a puppet in his place. His body, which will be transported to the spirit world, will move to a designated location within a 10-meter radius, and once time passes or the puppet is attacked, it will disappear. Items and skills cannot be used when in the spirit state. It turns out that Damien had used this skill in the very last moment, just before the queen's last attack was about to reach him. But he tells Uncle that the fight isn't over just yet, as he takes something out from the inventory. Holding a potion in his hand, Damien reveals that this was the most important thing. Damien shocks Uncle by pouring a health potion onto the queen's body, healing her in the process. As the queen recovers a bit of her health, Damien turns to Uncle, asking him if he was ready to deal the final blow right now. Uncle was stunned about what was going on, as the queen is healing, but Damien, with a smile on his face, tells him that he needed to deal the last hit.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.